Welcome back to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. The archives and load up some other talks that I've got of these Bob Earll cassettes. I've had them sitting on a hard drive for some time now. I've decided to share them with you all. Let me know what you think. Some people loved Bob. Some people hated Bob. Bob was Bob, but he talked all over the world. I mean, he's from Los Angeles, Beverly Hills area, and did other things. I think he was a writer. Just click down below, like or subscribe, or both, like and subscribe. Just click down below, like and subscribe on my channel. It helps me out. Just a little click for you, doesn't cost you anything, and I'm bringing you some Bob Earll. And have a good day if you want to.
It is at this time I would like to introduce our speaker tonight, Bobby E.
Actually, it's Bob E. No, that's okay. Half the world calls me Bobby. It's just luck of the draw. Thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous and its anonymity, I am Bob E. But on tape, it comes out Bobby. So I don't trust a man over 40 who wants to be called Bobby, Timmy, Tommy. It's just, you know. Oh, hi. I'm an alcoholic, drug addict, and I can give you a long list of obsessive compulsive disorders beyond that could keep me here all night. Hi. I heard a great Al-Anon joke today. I usually don't tell those, and it's probably 40 years old, and I never heard it, but it was that Al-Anons make love with the lights out because they don't want to see an alcoholic having fun. I don't know why, that just really moved me, I guess I get sick of people trying to live their life through mine, I'd rather see them get their own. I usually don't wear all black when I speak. I usually try and wear colors, but I just finished a week in the mountains with some men and some teenage gang members and some drums and some stuff, and a good friend of mine and I went, and we both, for some reason, had some kind of public presentation to make. He had one and I had one. For some reason, both of us were instinctively wanting to wear black. I don't know what the hell we're mourning the loss of. A lot of stuff, I guess, that went on up there. I do that stuff now a lot. I have heard it all, so I go to the mountains and do other things. That's an arrogant goddamn statement, but it's true. I've been sober a long time. I've been clean sober 33 years. I've been clean sober over half my life. I got sober when I was 26 years of age. I've been part of this program since, I was a child at 26. Certainly I hadn't matured at that point. I was an adolescent in a 26-year-old body. I've learned a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous. It gave me my life. I'm at odds with a lot of people in AA a lot of the time, but what the hell, it keeps it interesting, I'm one of these people that believes that there's a lot of help available out there and some of us need more of it than others. And I don't believe anywhere in anything written does it give one person in this program the right to get in the way of another person seeking out those programs or those therapies that they need in order to heal themselves. 17 years clean and sober therapy saved my life. Why? Well, I'm one of these people that drugs and alcohol was not a problem. I was so glad to find drugs and alcohol, I could have kissed the ground. When somebody gave me my first marijuana cigarette and my first glass of wine, I was 15 years of age and I'd been thrown out of Reese High School, which used to be a high school here in Los Angeles, for troubled kids. I'd lasted a day in Reese, one day, which gives you a real clean insight as to my attitude and where I was at without drugs and alcohol. I was 15 years of age. I was a product of an alcoholic father and a child beater for a mother, and I was her only child. I was her only target, and I took it hard and I took it a lot. We're talking broken bones, split eyes, a lot of stuff went on when I was a little boy. So as I got bigger, I was never going to let anyone do that to me again, and no one ever did. And so school was hard for me. When I entered school as a little boy at 5, I was already nervous and gun-shy, and I thought a lot. You know, I had to think a lot. If you grow up in a house as a child where there's tension, you got to think a lot. You don't get a chance to just be a kid and do stupid things. Stupid things can get you hurt. So you got to plan, figure, maneuver, manipulate. What makes them happy? What makes them sad? How quiet do I have to be? How quick do I have to move? Where do I hide? What toy do I play with? Who am I today? You know, it's like, so you're like, if you're like I was, then you're a chronic, constant thinker, and you're just a little guy, you know. And I needed time to play, but there was no time to play because play was dangerous in my family. Play could get me murdered. So by the time I hit the school system, I had from tension what they call attention deficit disorder. I mean, it takes me a long time to get stuff. I get it really well. And the problem was when I was in school in those days is I'm very bright. I have a very high IQ, but I'm also very slow. And in those days, if you were slow, bright and slow, they figured it was intentional. You know, they didn't figure you had a problem and maybe you needed some help and somebody should take a little extra time with you. They figured I was slow intentionally. They figured it took me a long time to answer questions because I was trying to make the teacher's life miserable. They had no concept of the pressure I was under in that seat when that teacher put that question on the board and wanted me to be the one to answer it. They couldn't guess what was going on inside of me, that I already felt inferior and inadequate and incomplete. I had no recollection of ever being comfortable in my body. I do not recall a day of being comfortable in my body, and now I am being put in a position in front of others to show you that I'm not okay. And that to me was my big secret, that I was not okay. So school for me was an absolute nightmare. It's no wonder that I only lasted a day in Reese. Reese was a high school. Most of the instructors were juvenile police officers, to give you a concept of the school, either currently employed as or retired. And they called my mother and said, we don't want him in the Los Angeles City school system. I hadn't drank, hadn't used. That was just me, clean and sober. That was what I was like. She said, well, what about this thing where he goes to school on, Saturdays and works? And I said, we don't want him. 3 days later, I was in Hermosa Beach. Somebody gave me a marijuana cigarette and a jug of red wine. Everything changed. I don't have to tell anybody in the room what happened. The magic occurred. I was comfortable in my body. I didn't feel inadequate. I didn't feel incomplete. I didn't feel insufficient. I was okay, man. It was like, this works. You know, let's do this again. Let's do it more. The first 3 years of my drinking and using drugs was like driving a fine automobile down the road of life, man. It was like driving the high road of life in a Rolls Royce. It was great. I could get up in the morning and create my day. I was like a chemist. I used to take off pharmaceutical warehouses, so I had a rather abundant supply of various chemicals and substances with which to work. And I could just get up in the morning, and if I was careful, I could create my day. I could create my mood. I had complete control. Was that a lovely concept? Control over my emotions for the day. Anything went haywire, I could bring it back. I had whatever substance it required to bring everything back and keep it going in the direction that I wanted it to go. For 3 years, magic. Not a problem for me. Saved my life. I believe it saved my life. Is there anybody I got to tell what happened after 3 years? One day I got up, put together the combination for happiness, and I was so depressed I wanted to die. And all I wanted one more time was that sense of feeling okay. The next 8 years of my drinking and using were a lot like being handcuffed to the bumper of a fine car and being drugged. Down the high road of life. And that's not some obscure metaphor either, because once upon a time in South San Gabriel, our beloved Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department did in fact handcuff me to the bumper of one of their cars and drug me around the goddamn block as an indication to the rest of the dealers in the neighborhood how you would be treated if you weren't more cooperative. So I have a real sense of what that feels like, being drugged around the block. Son of a bitch. I've never forgiven that one, and I'm 33 years sober. All I wanted, that's the period for most alcoholics and addicts where everybody turns on you. This is where they stop understanding you. When all I wanted back was one more time was to feel okay. All I wanted one more time was to be comfortable in my body. That's all I wanted. I just want to be comfortable one more time. And it was at that time that people would turn on me and say, man, if it did that to me, I'd quit. They didn't know what I was looking for. They had never experienced it, so they didn't know what it was. They couldn't imagine how I would go to such lengths and such pain and keep doing it. It's beyond their ability to, and they'll never understand it because they will never experience it. For whatever reasons, they'll not have that moment of magic that I had. I'm clean and sober directly as a result of loving God. I wouldn't want you to think, I did a lot of stuff. Carried a lot of guns and took a lot of money from a lot of people, dealt a lot of drugs. So that all sounds nice and, for some people that's dramatic and, macho bullshit. But we need to know that my last arrest was common drunk, place of arrest, main floor, city jail. One might say, how do you get arrested for drunk on the main floor of the city jail? It's easy, actually. Easier than I thought, perhaps. I had been sentenced to 5 weekends for drunk driving at Lincoln Heights Jail. And I'm a thinker. I think a lot, all the time. When I'm awake, I'm thinking. And I got off the bus, and I was living in Pasadena at the time, got off the bus in downtown Los Angeles to go do my weekend in Lincoln Heights Jail, and I started thinking, I'm going to jail. It made absolutely no sense to go to jail sober. You couldn't have convinced me that going sober was a good idea if you'd had a gun, So I got drunk, and I was 3 hours late. And they gave me a real dressing down. Sent out the captain of the facility to talk to me and tell me how bad it was going to be if I did it again. I got off the bus the next weekend. I'm a creature of habit, man. I was going to jail, I just could not see going to jail sober. It made no sense to me at all. So I got drunk again. This time they arrested me for drunk and put me in the drunk tank. They wouldn't even let me go upstairs and finish up my weekend. The last 3 weekends, I do learn eventually. The last 3 weekends I finished on a little phenobarbital. I was on time, too. But I had to go back and face this judge now. I had to go see him again. I had failure to execute a sentence. That could, with my jacket, that could be compounded into a felony in a heartbeat. And I was in serious trouble. So I went back to see this judge, and I thought, well, I couldn't even remember him. I had no idea what he was like. I thought, I'm in trouble. And I looked around the court. Always, if you're smart, you look for a Christian. You look for somebody with a Bible that's got a program so you can volunteer. So I'll do it. Whatever the hell it is, I'll go. Your Honor, I'm going with these guys down here. Him and me and Jesus are going to turn this around, We're out of here. It's been fun, and thanks a lot. There wasn't at least one available that I could see in the courtroom that morning. This young man was in front of me. I was number 2 on the docket. This young guy goes up and he gives him 5 weekends for a drunk driver. And this young guy says to him, he says, well, Your Honor, if you don't care, I'd just soon do the 10 days straight, get it over with. Judge looked down at him and says, well, he said, that's okay with me. He said, I was just trying to have a little respect for your wife, your child, and your boss. He said, you can do the 10 days straight. He said, you can do another 180 on top of that 10, so you can learn to have a little respect for your wife, your child, and your child. I thought, I'm in a little trouble here. I made just a fucked up big time on this little drunk charge. So I stand up in front of him, and, alcoholics, we are so wonderful. I always told people things they already knew. You see, when I spent my life telling people things they knew. My opening line was, after I said, Your Honor, may I speak before you sentence me? And he said, yes. My opening line is, I have a drinking problem. He didn't need that information, He looked at me and said, I realize that. And I said, Your Honor, I'm going to call AA. I don't even know where I heard of AA. Must have been Lincoln Heights Jail. Somebody said they thought they had a meeting in there in those days. I don't know if they did or not. And somebody may have announced it when I was there. I don't know where I heard it. And his whole demeanor changed. And that month, he smiled. And he got this like warm, fatherly sort of look in his eyes. And he said, good. He said, I'm really happy for you. He said, you'll find a new way of life. He said, for you, for the first time in your life, you'll be a useful member of society. He said, you're going to make many new friends. He said, this is a good thing. He said, I know this to be true because I have a brother who's an alcoholic who's been sober 9 years. Let me walk out of the courtroom. Let me walk. We have only one problem now. I got a call. See? And call means to ask for help. And I don't know where you came from, but where I came from, no help was available to me until I was bigger, and when it was available, you didn't ask for it. I grew up in a neighborhood where, here in Los Angeles, where if you were bleeding, you didn't ask for help. You just excused yourself, man, got a rag, tied off whatever was bleeding, and came back to the party. But you never, ever, under any circumstances, let anybody know that you needed help. It wasn't okay. I was 26, I weighed 135 pounds, I weigh 200 now, so if you want to imagine what I look like 60 to 65 pounds lighter, you'll get an idea of how I looked when I came to AA. I was living in a doorway in Pasadena, I had nowhere to live, didn't have a job, didn't have any money, my brains were fried, and I ripped an ad out of a Pasadena paper that said Alcoholics Anonymous, had the phone number, and I used to take that ad and a nickel or a dime or whatever the hell it was in to a payphone time and time and time and time again. And I could not make that call. Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't call somebody in an office somewhere I didn't know and say, I'm not making it, I need help. I never asked for help in my life, and I wasn't going to start. I just adore God. You know, God is so cool. I'm sitting in my doorway one day, and there's this shadow over me. And this voice says, hey, if you don't have any place to stay, man, you can come stay with me and the old lady. And I look up, and here's this guy. Him and his wife and 6 kids had been on welfare ever since I've known him. I laid a lot of money off on him. He was probably into me for $5,000. This is 1962, when $5,000 was a piece of change. He owed me $5,000. He's going to take me home. I can go with him. And those that have out there, those of you men and women who have the same kind of mentality I have, yeah, you understand this. He owed me. He owed me, man. It's his duty to take me out of that doorway. It's got nothing to do with help or my being weak. It's his responsibility. Pick me up and take me home. Yeah? And he did. He lived in an apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, the 8 of them, a block from my little doorway on Fair Oaks Boulevard, which used to be Pasadena's small but unique Skid Row. Don't ask me how I wound up there. I have no idea. But it was, never mind. Their police department wasn't too bright. It was comfortable. I'm in his apartment. It's covered with cockroaches. Some of them are mine. Some of them are his. You know, and you learn over the years not to kill them in those circumstances because you look really stupid stomping on empty carpet, you know. So I just kind of let him go, and I'm sitting there, and I'm nuts, and I'm completely insane. And I said to him, you know, one of these days, man, I'm just going to have to call AA and do something about my problem. He said, there's a girl down the hall goes to AA. This is 1962, guys. I couldn't even begin to imagine what a girl that went to AA looked like. It was beyond my comprehension. My brain just locked up on that one, you know. I thought, maybe gravel Gertie. You know, I don't know what. You know. But I've always been an incredibly curious animal, man. So I went down the hall and knocked on the door. These people are Eskimos, the people that God sends to get you where you need to get to and get what you need. And the gal that opened this door was the perfect Eskimo for me. And we get real worried about what we say to newcomers. So get your image of this now. The girl that opened this door was big enough to break every bone in my body. She stood about 6'2", 6'3", weighed about 235. She had the basic physical build of a professional football fullback. She had short black hair and tattoos all the way down both arms and both legs. This was not fashionable in 1962. Trust me, this was not fashionable in 62. She had a half-full pint of booze in her hand. This is my introduction to AA. All right? So I looked at her. I'm comfortable. She's street people. I can talk to her, you know. I said, hey, I'm curious about this AA thing. Standing there, you know, like this. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, AA will work if you want it, and I'm not ready to quit drinking. Made perfect sense to me. I looked at her and thought, man, if I had your size and strength, I wouldn't quit either. You know? Well, I'm skinny and my brains are gone, I can't fight anymore, and I got to get some help. She felt responsibility for the sobriety she had. She stuck me in a car and took me to the AA meeting. Talk about a gift from God, August 28, 1962. Been here ever since. What a ride. They were not ready for me in Pasadena. I have managed to do just about everything they tell you don't do in recovery, and I'm still here. One of the early ones they said was, I had real trouble getting a sponsor because I was so crazy, you know? And so I didn't have one for a while. And I was 3 weeks sober, and I gave a 10-minute talk. You know, we have this thing in AA about don't get emotionally involved the first year. I'd like to find the, you know, dried up little old man that created that one. I'm a firm believer, and I think it's great. I think you should get into a relationship as quick as you can because it'll get you closer to your sponsor. You can spend a lot of time ignoring your sponsor unless you're in a relationship. Then you'll be crawling to the phone. So it gets you working a little program maybe before you would otherwise. Huh? This story is true. Friends of mine know who were around then. I was 3 weeks sober. I gave a 10-minute talk at a meeting. There was a girl sitting there. She had 3 months, and her sponsor had told her, if you hear anything you like, take it home. So she came up to me and informed me as to her sponsor's mandate, and it seemed like a great idea to me. You know, I'm living with these two guys painting their house so I can have a place to stay, you know, so I don't have to sleep in my doorway anymore. She takes me home, and after about a week after we get together, she has a complete emotional breakdown, lands in a private psychiatric hospital. I, of course, feel responsible. You know, oh, God, what have I done? So I don't know what to do. I don't have a sponsor. I don't know who the hell to talk to. Don't like most of the people in Pasadena. You know, I mean, they're all marks to me. At that time, where my head was at, looked at them and thought, they serve finger sandwiches, you know, a couple of the meetings. I mean, it was like, it was hard. I had a little adjusting to do in Pasadena. So I would go visit her every day in this private psychiatric hospital. I take get well cards. Yes, I understand now. Taking get well cards to mentally ill, that is a little sick. I didn't know it then. My motivation was good, man. I meant well, you know. I meant well. I just didn't get what it was. Used to take the big book, and we'd sit by the swimming pool in the psychiatric hospital, and we'd read the big book. And we were together for about a year and a half. We separated about 6 times, went back together about 6 times. I mean, I eventually got sponsors, and we drove all our sponsors completely insane, where they, you know, all were saying, if you ever go back together again, we'll never talk to you, and all that shit. I knew they were just kidding. Then we didn't see each other for about 10 years. About 10 years later, I was in a Lano club, give a talk in Burbank, and I walked through the door, and the room was 3 times the size of this, and she was clear across the room. And we spotted each other, and it was like a Clairol ad. I mean, it was like we ran across this Alano club, like this Clairol commercial, and just entwined around each other. And simultaneously, we said the same thing. We both said, thank you for being part of saving my life. See, because now it's 10 years later and we have more information. We both understood that we were absolutely necessary to save each other's lives. She trusted everybody, I trusted nobody. I saw that we went to a meeting every day for her. I saw that we read the big book every day for her. I saw we read the 12 and 12 every night for her. I saw that we read the 24-hour-a-day book every morning for her because she needed help. Remember the dynamic? You know, this is somebody who cannot call and ask for help, but I could give her help. And in giving her help, I got the help I needed to stay alive. So it was beautiful. It was really a good thing. My basic problem in sobriety in AA was the longer I stayed sober, the crazier I got. I watched people really closely. This did not seem to be a situation that I was sharing with anybody else in the program. I would sit quietly in meetings and watch them, and they were okay. If you doubted that, you could ask them, and they would tell you. There used to be an operative word in AA, and that word was fine. Now, getting sober didn't change the underlying reasons over which I drank and used. So the minute I was no longer drinking and the minute I was no longer using drugs, I once again felt inadequate, incomplete, insufficient. I wasn't comfortable in my body, and I felt like there was this little pot somewhere inside of me of bubbling sewage. And that my role in life is to make sure you never, ever spot that pot of sewage. Because if you do, one of three things will happen. You'll make me go away, you'll go away, you'll draw the attention of other people to it and humiliate me and embarrass me. So I must live, always carefully, watching you to see how you do it so I don't get caught. You don't find me out. So I watched people in AA, and I got it early on that no matter what had happened to you in your life, you were fine. I mean, guys would come through the door of the nest, and there'd be a greeter there, and they'd say, "Harry, how are you?" And Harry'd say, "Fine, thanks." And then I'd find out 10 minutes later, Harry had been fired, served with divorce papers, and had his car repoed. You know? Truthfully, Harry should have been crawling into the meeting, begging, you know. But because we have image here in recovery, Harry was fine, see? Well, my biggest problem probably in early recovery for a number of years was anger. And it seemed to be connected to my ignition key for some reason. Now, I am compulsive and obsessive. You can give me something to do that's good for me, and I can probably almost kill myself with it. We will take meditation as an example. Someone said meditation is good for you. I discovered that if you meditate, you can leave your body. I had, been involved in a lot of near-death situations trying to leave my body. This is a good concept. I like this concept of leaving my body. I reached a point 8 years clean and sober where I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and meditate for 4 hours before leaving the house. After 4 hours in the lap of God, the thunder of silence, the peace and beauty of spirituality, I would go downstairs, get in my car, start to turn up, go up the driveway, turn right on Doheny, and some poor, unenlightened, uninformed human being would fail to use their turn signal. This would result in a 100-mile-an-hour chase down Doheny Boulevard. With me with my head hanging out the window, man, with foam coming out of my mouth, screaming obscenities like a mad dog. If we all were fortunate, I never caught the poor son of a bitch, If we weren't, I could be found standing in the middle of somebody's hood in an intersection trying to explain to them politely what the little lever on the left side of their steering wheel was for, which they did not seem to want to get out and talk about. I would then proceed from there to the meeting. Pull in the parking lot of the meeting, wipe off the foam, brush the hair back from, being windblown with my head hanging out the window, walk up to the door, there would be the greeter, say, "Hey, Bob, how are you?" "Fine, thanks." Didn't make any sense for me to tell him anything about this because I didn't hear anybody else talking about chasing people down the street 100 miles an hour with foam coming out of their mouth who were sober. I always knew I wasn't as good as the rest of them. I always knew that everybody else got a handbook on how to live life when they were born, and mine was lost. I knew all that, and that hadn't changed just because I was sober. And this continued to be a problem with me throughout sobriety. You know, I could surrender, I could pray, God could give me everything, and I could find a way to trash what I'd been given. Because I didn't have the skills or the information or the self-esteem to deal with it. And at 5 years clean and sober, I became a television writer. I mean, hugely successful. Now, this is a kid who can't spell. I failed English ever since they gave it to me, and they threw me out of high school in the 10th grade. And I became a writer. I made lots of money as a writer. I also just handled it really badly and picked incompetent people to manage it because they were nice to me. You know, and kids who've been abused, boy, you give us somebody who's nice to us, and man, we'll take a hammering before we wake up, you know, and give it back. By the time I was 17 years clean and sober, and I was going through marriages with a very uncomfortable frequency, too. This was a little problem. I think by the time I was 17 years sober, I've been through 5 of them. Sober. 4 sober. One wife died. That's a long story and a painful one. But I guess so. It must still be. Anyhow, one of the things I know today is that my past affects how I act sober. People say, oh, 5 marriages, my God, Bob. A little extreme, perhaps? Well, let's consider my background for a minute. Let's consider that I am the battered child of an angry woman. Okay? All right. So, one of the things I'm terrified of is some piece inside of me, not so much today, I can deal with it today, is an angry woman. An overtly angry woman reduces me to a frightened, helpless 2-year-old boy who's going to get hurt badly and no one is going to come help him. It's not logical. I understand that. You know? I understand that. I get it. I get it. You can look at my jacket and see all the shootings and all the guns and all the everything and say, how can this man be afraid of an angry woman? It's easy. I'm reduced to a small child. So when I'm in a relationship with a woman, then the one thing I cannot allow her to do is get angry. Well, you can't have much of a relationship if somebody can't get mad. Mm-hmm. I'd do anything to keep them from getting mad. Absolutely anything. When I became a writer, started to make a lot of money, you give them a credit card, let them go shopping. It's not a good idea. Don't do it. Trust me, it's a very bad idea. No one can shop like an emotionally upset woman on the credit card of the person she's emotionally upset with. It just seems to break down any barriers they might have had, you know. It becomes like a machine gun. They just figure it's a bullet every time the thing goes over, you know. That was one of my not good ideas. That one almost buried me. 17 years clean and sober, if you looked at my outside life, you'd say, my God, he could be an AA poster child. You know, kid from the streets, bad grades, thrown out of school, no profession, no trade. Now I'm a television writer, living in a penthouse at the beach, driving expensive cars, got a gorgeous young girlfriend, divorcing a gorgeous wife. Just look at, you know, AA speaker, renowned spiritual guru, just one small problem. Every morning when I woke up, I wanted to die. Other than that, I was fine. Just fine. 17 years clean and sober became necessary. I couldn't figure any place to go. I'll tell you why I couldn't figure any place to go. I'd done the steps more than once. I'd written 32 inventories by that time. I'd driven tens and tens and tens of thousands of miles to carry the message back into institutions all over this state and other states. I couldn't count the number of people I sponsored. I couldn't count the number of meetings I secretaried or made coffee or swept floors or put up chairs. I can't tell you the amount of work that I did. I know no living human being in Alcoholics Anonymous today that's worked a better AA program than I have. I do not know one anywhere at any time. And I was 17 years sober and wanted to die. Nothing wrong with the AA program. It had done everything it promised me it would do. It kept me clean and sober. As mad as I was clean and sober. I did what they asked me to do, and I was still here. Still here, 17 years later, with that kind of rage, and still doing it. So I decided to go see a therapist. Went in this woman's office, sat down, we had this little free get acquainted session. She looked at me, she said, start with your childhood, tell me a little bit about yourself. I said at 15 years of age, they threw me out of Reese High School in manual arts in LA, threw me out of manual and out of Reese. I discovered the wonderful world of drugs and alcohol. drank, used, smuggled drugs for about 11 years, rolled in the doors of AA at 26 years of age, 17 years ago, and here I am, clean as well. Looked at me sort of puzzled and said, I said, start with your childhood. You weren't born at 15. I said, I don't remember anything prior to 15. 32 inventories. You hearing this? 32 inventories. They all started at 15 years of age. No one said anything to me about what happened before that, Bob. You know why not? Because the adults who grew up in a family where there's alcoholics have radar for people with similar backgrounds. Every sponsor I had couldn't remember back past 15 either. So they didn't think there was anything unusual about it. Not to them. I didn't remember. They didn't remember. None of us remembered. It was fun. So when I said to this woman, I can't remember anything, she got this strange smile. By this point in my life, I'm a little cynical. I sort of thought her smile meant that when I left her office, she was going to call the Rolls-Royce dealer and tell him she wanted the one with the full leather interior. She had somebody who was about to pay for it, this poor sick son of a bitch in her office. What I didn't get that she was trying to tell me with a smile of hers was that if I had the courage to stick it out with her, she'd be present on the day that I met the man I am, as opposed to the man that I have believed myself to be all these years. She was right. I had the courage and we stuck it out. You know what I found out? It just blew me away. This is a lot of pain. This is 3 years of a lot of pain, a lot of crying, and a lot of dying, and a lot of pain. When my wife died, we met in AA. I was 8 years sober. We dated for 2 years. I was trying to do it right. We finally believed that we had found somebody that we could make the big run with, or at least a sizable chunk of it. We were married in January, February. They diagnosed the cancer in April. She died. People came up to me after her death and said, we're so sorry, Bob. We were so sorry. And I said, she's gone home to be with her father. It's the best I was capable of. A, I had expectations from people in AA because I was a whatever the hell I was. And B, I didn't know how to feel that kind of pain. I stopped feeling that pain when I was a little boy. I didn't know how to grieve the loss of anything. Man, I lost so much so early that grieving would have been a waste of time for me. 3 years into my therapy, one morning I walked in my therapist's office. She said, I think today we need to talk about Taylor. It was somewhere between 3 and 4 hours later when I left her office. It was the worst pain I ever experienced in my life. I went back to the little condo I had at the time. And I spent the next 3 days on the floor, literally on the floor. I couldn't get up, man. I lived in the corner of my apartment on the floor with the worst pain in my life. I finally felt what it was like to lose somebody that I knew loved me. They would never be back again for me to tell them I loved them. And somebody I loved, and they would never be here again for me to tell them I loved them. I was 20 years sober. Hadn't felt it. She'd been gone for 13 years. 10 years. She'd been gone 10 years. Finally, I got to the grief. I had to get through all these feelings. Well, I get it now. Now I understand it. I drank over feelings. And I've yet to hear anybody talk at a meeting when they talked about their first encounter with drugs and or alcohol, it didn't somehow alter their feelings. It made them taller, prettier, sexier, stronger, badder, okay, comfortable. Somehow, the ingestion of the chemical, the substance, altered their feelings. And yet, because of the fear of feelings, that may very well be the last conversation you'll ever hear this person have about feelings, and they'll be 20 years sober. Well, there's a little problem with this for some of us. We might have to die if we don't get to the damn feelings that were driving us nuts before we drank. And I'm not talking for everybody in the room. I'm just telling you my experience. Therapy saved my life. I don't have a big book. I wish I had it. But if those of you who have been giving your baby shit about therapy, read page 132 and then call me, okay? After it tells you that we urge you to get outside help. Never belittle the efforts of a good psychiatrist. There are many fine psychologists and other practitioners, the book says. I don't even want to guess at what Bill meant by other practitioners. I mean, for God's sakes, he and Dr. Bob were using a Ouija board. I don't even want to, wow. And he and Arthur Ford were buddies. I mean, that enough is enough to say, what did he mean when he said other practitioners? It doesn't matter, because they knew then. They said, we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more. So what happens? Well, I look at AA and watch a lot of people in it and see them behave just like they behaved when they drank. New information comes up, it's available, it's enlightening, and they go, I'm sorry, guys, I don't want to be in an organization that does that. I want to be in an organization that's inclusive. I mean, it's like we're afraid that this stuff's going to hurt us or make us weak. The term I hear a lot, which I love, is dilute. Yeah, you'll dilute your sobriety with these other programs. I have 10 friends who took their lives more than 10 years sober. None of them drank. None of them drank. They blew their goddamn brains out or took poison. 10 good men died. Why? Because they never got to the stuff that was killing them in the first place. That's why. Yeah? Well, Bob, equate that to AA terms. Okay, glad you asked. My sponsors came up to me at one point and said, it's time for you to make amends, son. This is the most important step you're going to work in this program. This is a step that separates the men from the boys. This is a step that you get the promises after you work this step, son. Go back and deal with the consequences of your drinking and your addiction. I said, okay, and trust me when I tell you, making amends for me was not fun. Not many people said, oh, Bob, we're so happy you found recovery. A lot of people were actually voiced their disgust that I had found a way to make it, They were very unhappy. It wasn't fun. But I did the amends step. My recovery basically has been in two distinct phases. The first 17 years, for the most part, was dealing with the consequences of my addiction. I could have shortened that if I'd known better if more stuff had been available, but it wasn't. And I had to deal with the consequences of my alcoholism and my addiction. If you're the nicest guy in the world, a minister, and you drink alcoholically, by the time you get here, there are going to be consequences to your drinking. You will have lied, you will have cheated, you will have stolen, you will have done things that you need to clean up. Okay, here's the hook. You cannot tell me over here on this side the consequences of what I did are so severe that this is the most important step I'm going to work in recovery. And then when I want to tell you how bad it was when I was a kid and how much damage was due to me, tell me to ignore that. You cannot tell me that the consequences of what others did to me is not as important as the consequences of what I did to others. I mean, it won't fly, guys. It won't fly. It won't hold up anywhere. I mean, if you would like to have this debate with me at some point after the meeting, I'd love to do it, and we can have a good discussion, but it doesn't work. You see, the consequences of what was done to me was what was dictating my behavior sober. That was the choices I was making on career, on wives, on how I behaved, on the fear I had, on my inability to live, and basically believing I wasn't a good human being. Because that message was handed to me as a child. That's a lethal message. And I know how lethal it is, because I have a little girl who's 8 now. I'm divorced, but she's my baby. And I'll tell you the difference between a child who's been raised, who's never been struck, never been yelled at, had her power honored, and I mean, it's like, to watch her, I mean, I just weep sometimes. This is a whole human being. And she's a kid. She doesn't have to think all the time. She gets to just be a kid and make mistakes, because she's not at risk for making a mistake. You know? Sometimes I kid her, I say, you're behaving just like a child. She'll look at me, put her hand on her hip, and she'll say, Daddy, I am a child. I couldn't have done that without a lot of tools. I had to read a lot of books on parenting. I had to go to classes on parenting. I had to go talk to therapists on how to get through this shit, because my instinct, as much as I love this child, I want you to get the difference between instinct and intuition. I used to walk in this little girl's room after she'd first been born, and I would sit there at night in a rocking chair by her crib, and I would cry just because I was so goddamn glad she was in my life. That's how much I love this little girl. I have never loved, and I do not like the divorce, and I do not like being a separated father, and I'm 33 years sober, and the pain of that had me on the fucking ground here for 3 months. And I mean, I was crawling through the bedroom, let me tell you. It was not fun. And there's no choice but to go through it. At least I didn't have to medicate it, and I didn't have to, pretend I was okay. My friends saw me destroyed. I'd sit and weep at this little girl's bedside. I was so happy. I've held her and told her how beautiful she is and how glad I am she's a girl and how thrilled I am she's in her life, how proud I am to be her daddy. And yet when she and I were at odds with each other, my immediate instinct is to double my fist and to slug her and catch her here in the corner of the eye where my mother used to catch me. Why on God's earth would I think about doing that to a little girl who I love more than anything in the world? I've been trained to do that. See, I know it works. I know that it will stop her from doing whatever it is she's doing or start her doing whatever I want her to do. I never had to do that because my wife and I had a deal. One of us are in a bad place, we'd give her to the other one. Quickly. Get out of the room until we could count to 10 and come back. So sometimes if you're here and you're stuck and you're sober and you're in a lot of pain, maybe it's time now to clean up the consequences of what happened to you. Maybe you've done your work on your sobriety. And some of you may never need to do this other work. But for God's sakes, be kind and supporting and loving to those of us who do need to do the other work. And it's opened a lot of doors for me. And I walk by a mirror today and I smile. I look at this man and say, he's a good man. He's a good man. Not weak, inadequate, insufficient, incomplete. And there's a word for this little bubbling pot of sewage. It's called shame. Shame is given to us by others. Think about that. And it's a sad thing because basically it means you're ashamed of who you believe yourself to be. And who I believe myself to be was a lie. So I wish you well in your recovery. You know, I don't know if you need anybody to give you permission, but man, I'm for whatever works, you know? I'll go do weird shit, let me tell you. I just finished this 7 days in the mud and the rain and the woods and the drums, and when I walked into that thing, I said, oh my God. Basically what it was is these men who have been involved in the men's movement for a long time said, if we don't carry this message to the young men, we are just doing it backwards. So we brought in young gangbangers from black and Hispanic. We had young, old. We had every race represented here in the mountains, about 100 guys. And the theory was we would create a village. And in this village, we'd use ancient African rituals to make it work. It almost didn't work. I want to tell you, it was tense for a while. And it worked. Well, this is not the man I once believed myself to be. See, I can walk up there not knowing what's coming and say, I'm down, man. Let's do it. I'm here. You know? So I wish you well with your recovery. Thank you for having me here to talk. God bless you. Happy birthday and birthday.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.